Hi, thank you so much, everybody. It's so excited for you to join us today. Welcome to the Capacity Building webinar series. My name is Marcelina Ramirez. I am the Grants Awards and Programs Coordinator here at Creative West. Today's webinar, we're focusing on building your own artist in residency. A recording and slide deck will be sent to all participants following this meeting no later than Monday. While you're here today, please take a moment to complete our feedback survey at the end to help us improve the series and focus on the topics that matter to you the most. We are also joined by ASL interpreters from Indigenous Ways. We appreciate your interpretation for these sessions. Next, I want to introduce my co-facilitator, our grant specialist, Sierra Scott. I'll pass it over to Sierra to start us off with our Zoom norms, preamble, and our shared commitments.
Hi all, thanks for joining us today. And Marcelina, thank you for the intro. My name is Sierra Scott. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the grant specialist here at Creative West. We'll start by going over the Zoom norms. Please keep your microphone muted when not speaking. Please rename yourself to your first and last name and your state or jurisdiction acronym. To ask questions or make comments, please use the raise hand function and/or write your questions in the chat or for the Q&A. And please note that live transcripts are turned on if you need those. Next slide. Creative West, formerly known as West Staff, shares a fundamental and abiding commitment to equity, accessibility, inclusion, and belonging. We recognize and greatly appreciate the extraordinary contributions of our team and the impact we seek to have in our communities in the West and beyond. We understand that trust is built slowly with communities we wish to serve that have experienced generational betrayal and trauma. Our shared commitments provide a grounding for generating spaces of trust and safety within our team and in the communities we seek to serve through our work. We are dedicated to seeing these commitments reflected in our work over time consistently. And finally, our shared commitments. We value humility, learning from our mistakes, and asking questions to gain deeper understanding. We feel empowered to hold one another accountable, establish boundaries, and ask each other for help. We lean into discomfort by facing challenges and conflict with openness and grace. We stay present by listening actively, being mindful of body language, and participating to the fullest of our ability. We share from our own experience and grow as a team through the inclusion of every individual voice. And we prioritize accessibility and are mindful of our language in ensuring belonging for all. And now I'll pass it back to Marcelina.
Thanks so much, Sierra. Before we get to our speakers, we're just going to really quickly go over the capacity building webinar purpose. The FY26 capacity building webinar calendar is designed to provide a strategic, inclusive, and responsive learning series for individual artists, culture bearers, and arts organizations across the Creative West region and beyond. Grounded in feedback from the FY25 series, this dual stream approach intentionally separates webinars for individual artists and arts administrators, allowing each group to deepen the skills and areas most relevant to their practice or operations. Now for today, I'm very excited to introduce to you two of our guest speakers, Scott Levy from Colorado Springs and Javier Stell-Fresquez from California. First up, we're going to have Scott Levy, and then next we will have Javier. Scott has been the executive director of Green Box Arts since 2021. Previously, Levy spent 15 years serving as producing artistic director for the Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center Theater Company and the Penn Post Theater in Maine. His work has been seen in over 60 U.S. cities, the Globe in London, and the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. An in-demand arts educator and thorough leader, Levy teaches regularly for the institutions across the country. Additionally, he serves as the board chair for the Cultural Office of the Pikes Peak region. Awesome. So excited to be here with you, Scott, and I'm passing it along to you.
Thanks so much, and pleasure to meet you all. I thought I'd start by letting people in on what Greenbox is. So Greenbox is a year-round arts organization located in the tiny mountain hamlet of Green Mountain Falls, Colorado, which is 20 minutes due west of downtown Colorado Springs. surrounded on three sides by the Pike National Forest. Uh, it's a very, very tiny canyon here in Green Mountain Falls, which has a year-round population of about 700 people. Very, very rural, very intimate. Greenbox as an organization started in 2009. And for our first decade, our only program was a multidisciplinary, multi-week summer arts festival. That is still the hallmark or the crown jewel of our programming. And this summer's festival, which begins on the 4th of July, will be our 18th annual arts festival. The three other corners of programming in our box are our artist in residency program, our growing outdoor museum art collection of 2- and 3-dimensional sculptures and other sort of visual artwork, and arts education. Because we're talking specifically about artist in residency programs, ours started very small in 2019. And it was after COVID that the artist in residency program really became a fully formed year-round cornerstone of our programming. So over the course of each calendar year, we are able to award, and I want you to remember that word, that we do award residencies. We award between 6 and 8 residencies each year. Because we are a multidisciplinary organization, we are looking for artists from any discipline, at any stage of their career, from anywhere in the world. And what we offer is time, space, and assistance to make either a specific work, a specific project, or just an idea take its next form. We offer our residencies ideally as 30-day immersive here in the community. But over the last couple of years, we've recognized that some artists are not really able or necessarily want to devote a whole month to this specific project or this specific practice. So we are now in a place where we are able to award residencies between 1 and 4 weeks of time. We don't just offer residencies to individual artists, but also to duos, trios, or larger ensembles. We work with a lot of choreographers, dance companies, dance artists, musicians, sculptors, painters, photographers, writers. The list goes on and on. What we believe that we have to offer, in part, is our beautiful place. The campus of Greenbox is the entire town of Green Mountain Falls. Our assets, both formal and informal, indoor and outdoor spaces, performance venues, studios, are located and dotted throughout the town. So our campus has no gates. And there's something about this place. What many, if not all, of our resident artists say upon returning to their own homes following the residency is that there is a pace, a certain way of being able to quiet the mind and to be at their creative best self here in this kind of environment in Green Mountain Falls. To be considered for a residency at Greenbox, we open a free application portal every fall on our website at greenboxarts.org. We leave the application portal open for 6 weeks and close it around the middle of October and spend the next 6 weeks adjudicating the literally hundreds of applications that we receive on an annual basis. So yes, as the presenter or producer of a residency program, it is highly, highly competitive. In the end, we are only able to award between 1 and 1.5% of all of the applications that we receive for a residency. Now, maybe that's skewed a little bit because we do not charge artists to apply. And our application is, I think, pretty simple. We basically ask 4 core questions that we ask for written responses to as part of the application. The first question, why Greenbox? Why this place? Why this organization? What is it about what we are presenting that we are able to offer in our environment that speaks to you? The second question, a statement of interest. If you are awarded a residency, what would you do with this time? And again, we do not necessarily look for a finished product at the end of the residency period. We had we had a couple. They have different artistic practices, but in their application, this was about 3 years ago, they talked about how they had been working professionals for 30 to 40 years doing separate practices and rarely in the same place at the same time. And they were looking for a month, particularly in the winter, so that they could throw snowballs at each other and see what happened. And that sounded pretty good to us. And so we awarded that residency. The third question that we ask is for a community engagement proposal. As I noted, we do not charge artists to apply, and we pay artists rather handsomely, I think, if they are awarded a residency. What we ask in return is for some community engagement. And depending on the artist and depending on the practice, we tailor each community engagement to the resident. So that could take the form of a masterclass, an open studio, a workshop of a performance in progress, visiting an elementary school population. The list goes on and on. We're completely open and we are in service through the residency program to the artist, more so than to ourselves. The fourth question is really a series of minor questions which are related to what are the resources that you would need to be successful? And what are the times of year that would work best for you? Because as you can imagine, when we are adjudicating, it becomes a jigsaw puzzle based on the artists and the artist's needs. What's the best time of season for them to be here? Can they be here then? Does it match up? It's et cetera. The list goes on, right? So you can imagine. As part of our residency program, we have an exclusive house, I'll call it, that we call the Shed, that is just for our artists in residence. It's 3 bedrooms across 2 apartments, fully stocked, laundry facilities, amenities, including hot tub, etc. So the agreement that we give to each awarded residency is the housing, the stipend, which starts at, for an individual artist, $9,000 for a 30-day residency is what we provide. That's where we start. And all of the other resources that we have that we can give to the artist to provide. That can be an actual studio space to paint in, a performance venue to conduct technical residency opportunities, or even the ability for us to connect artists to other artists or organizations throughout the Rocky Mountain region. We also have now started to create a residency alumni program as a way to allow Greenbox resident artists to utilize each other for further discussion and further artistry. Uh, so that's the base of the Greenbox Artist in Residency program. And as I told Marcelina previously, about a year and a half ago, I was invited to present our residency program at the Transcultural Exchange conference that was held in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And there were, I would say, representatives of 60 to 70 other artist residency programs located throughout the world. And what really struck me, and I'm not going to say that Green Box is an absolute unicorn, but it seemed to me that most of the artist residency programs that were represented at this conference both charged artists to apply and then charged the artist to actually attend. We're absolutely the opposite. We believe in strengthening individual and ensemble-based artists. We see ourselves as a prime incubator for contemporary arts in all of its forms. And I believe that it is part of our duty to help prop up artists whenever possible. And so, in turn, not only is that through the financial commitment and the other commitments that I noted, but we also are able sometimes to find opportunities for our residency artists to then return to Greenbox and be a featured artist in our summer festival. So currently, actually, right now, as I speak, we have two artists in residence. Both happen to be visual artists. One, Ziba Rajabi, was born in Iran and lives in Minneapolis. And the other, Corey Feder, who lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Both of them are actually working on indoor installation art, furthering both of their very disparate practices. And these works will be on view throughout the entire summer season. Our festival is visited by about 7,000 unique individuals. And throughout the entire summer season last year, we saw about 100,000 people visit our tiny mountain town to take in our art and events. Ziba is creating an installation that utilizes painted pieces of fabric that are stitched together into sort of a room of sorts. And Corey is continuing her practice of creating colchas, which are embroidered artworks. And Corey is exploring Asian people's migration through southern Colorado and taking that work and putting it into a colcha, which will be about 4 feet tall by 3 feet wide, and also will be displayed indoor. It's a lot of visual art. We actually spent the first quarter of 2026 hosting 3 separate residencies from dance artists, Hellenius J. Wilkins, Hannah Garner, and the Second Best Dance Company, and Dance Aspen all had residencies, and all 3 groups created new work with ensembles that varied in size from 2 performers to 8 performers. I think that's a good overview, Marcelina. I don't know if there are other specific areas I should hit or what
No,
happens next.
that's great. I have a few questions in the chat people are asking. We have, what was the third question Green Box artists asked artists in the application? Sorry, I missed that one.
The third question is specifically about a community engagement proposal. If awarded the residency, what are some ideas that you might have related to how you would engage with both the hyper-local community and the greater Pikes Peak region community, which includes the metropolis of Colorado Springs?
Awesome. And then does oral storytelling be something that someone could apply for?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every possible artistic medium is on the board.
Amazing. And I do have a few quick questions for you. So we have here some questions that we've gathered over time that some of our artists have asked. So let me know if these are something that you would be able to answer for us today. And the
Mhm.
first one being, what are some green flags artists should look for when applying to residencies?
Well, I don't know that there's a one size fits all answer to that question because I think that each individual artist or collective has different wants and needs. I feel like if I were to think about some of the proposals we've received that I would say right off the bat are just not successful, it's because there's not a clear answer to why us? Why Greenbox? Not just, oh, I'm applying to every residency out there and I'm hoping one sticks. But what is it about this one beyond that we are providing compensation that entices you to want to be here and to be part of the fabric of both our organization and the community?
Thank you for that. And for just like looking into something like that, what is the thing that you believe sets green arts separate from the rest and why you've believed that you've had such success as a program?
Well, I really, as I just said a little bit ago, I really do think that not putting any financial restriction on the artist is something that really does set us apart. Um, and there's something about this environment. I think that because as I noted, our campus is not enclosed by gates. You can really feel like you are part of a community. I also neglected to note that we generally, even though this is not the case at this specific moment, we generally do not host more than one residency at a time. And so our residencies afford a degree of isolationism. And some people thrive in that environment and others don't. And
Mhm.
so knowing what kind of environment your specific project or practice will thrive in or what that kind of isolationism may provide you, I'm always interested in artists who are trying to do something that they have not had the right space, time, or environment to practice before. I'm more interested in the experimentation than somebody saying, I'm a master at this. I've been doing it for 20 years and I want to do what I've been doing at your place. That's not as exciting as saying, oh, I've been an oil painter for 20 years and I really want to have embedded time to explore watercolor, right? And
Mhm.
here's why I want to. That's more interesting to us, I think.
Awesome. We do have a really great question in the chat. I'm curious about how you can consistently financially support an artist residency program. What are some strategies from a fundraising perspective that help to make these programs successful, especially if the model you're looking to go for it paying artists rather having them pay?
I think the unhappy answer is that you need a funder who is willing to fund the program in totality. And I don't want to get too much into the entire history of Greenbox, but I will note that Greenbox was formed and started as a project of a family philanthropy And that philanthropy still provides 2/3 of Greenbox's annual operating budget. And the co-founders of Greenbox are still the executive committee of Greenbox's board of directors. And this program is terribly important to the mission of the organization. And so the financial commitment stays.
Yep. And we don't have any more questions in the chat yet, but I have two more for you. Uh, for you, when artists leave your space, what do you hope that they can carry with them?
Well, I hope that artists are able to have discovered something new in their practice, in their craft, in their work. And that's what will carry through. Um, there's also a slight economic development piece, I'll say, which is related to, without fail, artists don't want to leave once they come here. But most artists had never even been here before the residents, or didn't even know that Green Mountain Falls existed. So literally putting Green Mountain Falls on the map and telling other people about our artistic community, whether that results in those people applying for an artist residency or planning a trip that encompasses Greenbox as part of their Southern Colorado adventure. That's a huge piece for us.
Awesome. We popped up two more questions in the chat, and then that'll be it for you, Scott.
Okay.
We have one from Ryan from Oregon. Do you have a metric for gauging the outcomes of community engagement? How do you determine the success for the long-term community that is being engaged?
Yes, and again, there's not a one size fits all because the community engagement activities can take so many different forms. We had a dance company that we were able to provide free hour-long, I'll call them sort of master classes in 5 separate Pikes Peak library branches located throughout the entire region. That was wildly successful because we were placing arts and the audience was able to experience this for free in very diverse communities, some extremely underserved by any arts events. That was successful, whether there were 3 audience members at one session or 40 at another. So I don't like to quantify it as much, but it's the quality. And every single community engagement activity that we do through our artist in residency program has no charge to participants, whether it's a master class or a performance, um, or whether we call Colorado College and say, I have an artist, they would love to come give a master class to one of your classes. We don't ask the college to provide us compensation for providing the artist either. So um, I hope that somewhat answers the question.
No, that was great. And we have in the chat, and then I actually lied. I have one more question for
Oh,
you.
keep going. Let's keep going.
Do you have a favorite impact stories of artists from being part of the fabric of the community?
Oh, yes. And this is a residency project we did with installation artist Brooke Smiley, who is a Osage tribal member. Brooke used her residency here to create the first iteration of a long-term, long-range project of hers called Earth Speaks, which is designed to reclaim land, in our case, from the Southern Ute tribe, and to utilize the land for a very large, welcoming, usable space. What Brooke created here for us is, well, it is called Earth Speaks, but this specific project takes the form of a open bear's paw. And Brooke created 5 earth benches utilizing the clay and the dirt from that specific spot each bench represents one finger of the bear's paw, and the creek runs directly through the middle of the benches like the lifeline. About 40 or so community members literally had their hands in assisting to help build this project with Brooke. And as I noted, it's made from the dirt of the earth. And Brooke first installed this project with the help of community members 3 years ago. And the weather here is, if you don't like it, you wait a minute, like it's always changing. And a year went by, and some of the benches had some cracks. And the community decided they did not want this to go away. And the community reached out to Brooke directly and said, what can we do? What are some tools and techniques that you can give us to upkeep this? And the piece still lives. And Brooke has actually returned to the community 2 more times since that first residency, actually at her own expense, and has met with members of the Southern Ute tribe and has blessed the space with both those who came before, those who helped build the work, and thinking about those who will be in that space long into the future.
That's incredible. Thank you for that.
Wildly impactful.
Oh yeah, that's so beautiful. And for our last question for you for right now, before we get to the end of the Q&A section, what advice would you give organizations that say, we want to pay artists, but we just don't have the funding right now?
Well, find the funding. I believe that supporting artists is worthy of financial support. And I would say really take a hard look at the budget for your proposed residency program. What expenses could be shared amongst other organizations, or where is there room to open up space to provide monetary compensation to the artists? And while I think that that financial compensation is terrible, I mean, think about it, right? If an artist is coming to a residency, they I'm going to assume cannot just give up their primary home, their primary residence, and they may not be able to sublet that space. So now an artist is taking on additional expense to be able to go somewhere else to practice their craft. And so while I think financial compensation is tantamount to strengthening artists and honoring their work, perhaps there's opportunities to find in-kind services for artists so that you don't have expenses related to housing, you don't have expenses related to food, and maybe those expense lines can be moved into providing actual compensation for the artist.
Awesome. What a mic drop to end it on. That was incredible. Thank you, Scott. We'll be hearing from Scott again and Javier for a joint Q&A kind of panel. But just for right now, thank you so much, Scott, and we'll see you in just a little bit right after Javier. And now we're going to have, Sierra, if you don't mind dropping that prompt in the chat, we're going to have ask a quick little question. What would make an artist feel genuinely welcomed the second they arrive? And so if anyone feels free to please go ahead and answer those questions, that would be super, super greatly appreciated. Awesome. Well, everybody is getting started with the O's. I would like to now introduce to you to Javier Stell-Fresquez, who is now also one of our Native Arts and Heritage grantees for Creative West as well. Javier Stell-Fresquez, Pura Antigua Pueblo, Two-Spirit, mixed-race, detribalized Chicanx from El Paso, Texas, is a performance artist, dancer, curator, activist, maker of short films, and published writer. Javier has worked in all aspects of queer experimental performance creation, from event production to social media outreach, development, and strategic planning. With a Bachelor in Science in Environmental Science with honors in Chicano Studies from Stanford University, she connects her Indigenous and LGBTQ2S plus cultural events to mixed audiences and global realities. She serves Indigenous communities of the San Francisco Bay as a board member of Bates and as a producer of Living Spirits Festival of Two-Spirit Performance. Thank you so much, Javier, for being here. And I know that we have a little bit of a poll that we would like to start with. So I'm going to go ahead and
Not,
launch.
not quite, actually.
Not yet.
I was hoping, actually, I wasn't realizing that we'd have as many questions to the audience, but I'm glad that there's that interactivity. I generally love more interactive things. So this is your everybody's little heads up that there'll be a quick poll later on that will maybe inform what I share and how. But also, I think it would be great for everyone to see what the results of that are to understand, I don't know, maybe the state of our field. But first, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this, Lena and Creative West. It's an honor to be in front of you all virtually, and I'll do a little reintroduction and give a little bit of information about myself and my background. We'll do a little poll. I'll describe some tips on how to put together a DIY residency, because really I have experience in putting together residencies for myself, less in fully built out residencies. And after that, I'll describe a little bit of a commissioning program that I have started through the festival that I founded about 6 years ago, which is relevant to some of these topics of centering artists. So I grew up in El Paso, Texas, along the border between Texas, El Paso, and Texas, New Mexico, and Mexico. It's relevant to a lot of what I do. I moved to the Bay Area, Ohlone lands, in 2008. So I've been here about half of my life. I am joining right now from the Lejean, Huichin, Ohlone lands of Oakland, where I live and play. And when I'm not producing, I can also make my creative work. I have been a dancer all my life. I'm completing a second short film, and I am a published author and also a performance artist. And I basically have two residencies under my belt that I would say were more extended time working on performance work. And as the producer of Weaving Spirits Festival of Two-Spirit Performance, I created this first festival that is focused specifically on Two-Spirit performers and indigiqueer folks. If either of those terms are unfamiliar to anybody here, they are basically just umbrella terms for folks who are both Native American and LGBTQI++ member of the rainbow. We have very few opportunities and very few spaces that are made for us with people with all the intersectional awareness of how to make space for our voices and our performance. Indigenous performers in general are highly marginalized within the performance field and severely underpaid. So this is why I decided to found this festival together with a very famous drag mother, Miko Thomas Land O'Lakes. So with that little introduction, actually, I wanted to I wanted to show the trailer of our festival, if that is ready to share. Now I can say a little bit more as that's getting ready.
I wasn't able to get the trailer, and I do have the link to Weaving Spirits' website, though.
Okay, maybe we'll just drop that in the chat. The festival says a lot more than I can with words. I'm sorry, the trailer says a lot more than I can with words, but I'll do my best with words. This annual festival is a weekend-long program, sometimes 2 weekends, with that centers for commissioned artists who are offered a pretty robust commission, which includes various aspects of creative development. I will describe those later. But in that, we gather a mixed audience. It's open to the public, anyone in the public, whoever can come respectfully. And we've had a beautifully mixed audience. And we, in so many ways, offer people usually their first space made for and by Two Spirits to take their next creative step across about 3 months. We invite them to the performance maybe 4 months beforehand, and across 3 months, they can make work in the direction that they want with production budget and a work in progress showing before the performance, the festival. The festival itself is actually taking different directions now to diversify its programming, to offer smaller programs year round, and to meet the increasingly urgent needs that our trans and Two Spirit communities are facing under this current administration. I think now is a good time for the Zoom poll because I wanted to offer a moment of interactivity, but also a way for us to reflect on what we're coming here with in terms of our interest in residencies and some of the sort of foundations of what we need for them. So if everyone could answer this poll really fast. Hopefully the questions are very clear. The first question is, how much do you agree with the statement, in my career, I have to pay my dues?
And that's on a scale of 1 to 5. So 1 being least agree, 5 being most. The second is, how much do you agree with the statement, in your creative process/work, I know and express my needs, wants, and dreams, on a scale of 1 to 5, again, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. And have you known more than one situation in your creative field where a person advocating for themselves led to more or better opportunities for others in the future? Yes or no?
We'll give a quick minute for that. And I think at the end, the results will be visible to everyone.
If not, we have a little over half participation right now for the first question, how much do you agree with the statement, in my career, I have to pay my dues? 16% voted 1, 5% voted 2, 32% voted for 3, 16% voted 4, and 32% agreed 5. For the second question, how much do you agree with this statement? In your creative process or work, I know and express my needs, wants, and dreams. The highest score, being out of the majority, 50% said that they felt about a 3 about how much do you agree with this statement in your creative process, I know and express my wants, needs, and dreams. 10% out of 5, 25% out of 4, 15 out of 3, and 0 for 1%. And for question 3, have you known more than one situation in your creative field where a person advocating for themselves led to a more slash better opportunities for others in the future? 95% said yes.
Cool. Super interesting. Super cool to see where people are landing. Oh, and here's some results. Feel free to look at them further. Yeah, I wanted to ask these, as I said, for us to sort of look at ourselves. And I feel they're important questions to ask ourselves as artists with so many odds stacked against us and so many narrow pipelines designed to extract work, ideas, and all the facets of culture from us. This is true especially for those of us from marginalized backgrounds. And I'm hoping what I share points at ways for all of us to move away from the pay your dues logic, at least the overall pay your dues logic. I'm sure there are some contexts in which it is very true. But under capitalism, I think it's a logic that does a lot of harm. And to regularly make space, move away from that logic and to regularly make space for artists to learn, well, for artists to learn how to voice their wants, needs, and dreams. And even further, to make space for when artists need to move from requests to demands. And some of the experiences that I've had in DIY residencies can help shine a light on what I mean by that. But I also want to give some quick prefaces because there's a lot I feel like saying, and some of what I have to say is controversial and far outside the standard track for seeking and completing residencies successfully. All of my residencies have felt successful and met my major aims. Some of the controversial things I have to say, taken by folks who are not genuinely interested in equity or allyship or a better future, it might motivate them to not bring on folks from marginalized experiences. Ultimately, that's on your conscience and on your ancestors. I ask folks unsure where they stand in these matters to just notice in your workspaces the accommodations that get made for folks that are relatively privileged or from relatively privileged backgrounds, including but not limited to white cis male geniuses. This accommodating of privileged folks and approaches and art very often includes valuing their abstraction, not others, and making space for various kinds of hijacking of a situation, emotional or urgency based, as examples of hijacking. Also, none of my sharing reflects the views of the presenting organizations, and they didn't know any of the details of what I was going to share. So getting back to the matter of things, I'm a collaborative artist. I don't so much like to generate material on my own. Each collaboration that I've worked with has been very different and different needs in the room. That's part of why I usually just work with one collaborating artist, because to really move carefully and build a trusting collaboration takes time and lots of effort and lots of care. So I'm also a house artist at a experimental theater in San Francisco. That has allowed me to set up rehearsal space or be able to quickly offer a workshop there for inviting my collaborators, or we're working with my collaborators here in the Bay. I'll just mention that as one of the things that can be worthwhile in terms of looking for fiscal sponsorship or becoming a house artist somewhere. Now, thinking about DIY, do-it-yourself residencies. What I mean by that is a situation where one or both artists in a collaboration or multiple are offered an opportunity to be somewhere for a certain amount of time. Some amount of expectation from whoever is creating that opportunity for them, and some amount of hopes and goals and dreams from the artists for that time. So we get down to considering, yeah, what are your needs and dreams? Here's some things to think about. Your housing for that time. Can you live really minimally with somebody in the same room? Do you need separate rooms? How to ask for that initially. How to set up the situation without necessarily asking the funder to fund the accommodations of the other person. Can the person who secured that residency or time or funding ask for an ample Airbnb with a couch in it that's a workspace as well as a room with a bed? This was very useful for one of the residencies that I'll describe later. And then production budget. Is that available where you're going? Does it have flexibility? How rigidly how rigid are the parameters of that production budget? Can it only be for lighting? Can it also be for working with the consultant that you want to work with, or the dramaturge that you want to work with, or to pay another collaborator to come up from upstate? Now, also volunteers, especially if you're in a DIY situation like this, where an institution, you've already maybe asked an institution to expand its budget, or there is just clear needs for what you'd like to do. Is there particular days that you can look for volunteers? Can you ask the institution for help outreaching for those volunteers? What are their needs, and ways that you can offer them thanks beyond just saying thank you? Feeding them, it's always a good idea. And then might you need somebody in the rehearsal space to help with the process of being a body, in that there's a well, I will use the particular wild example that I thought of recently in a performance process. But yeah, there's just so many ways that a friend or maybe somebody else in the arts scene who is interested in this residency but doesn't know how to get it, or in the venue but hasn't been there much, would be interested in just being around, hanging out, and somehow being part of your process. There's probably a good balance to walk there between first asking the institution if they can actually resource that kind of a thing, and asking a lot of people to do unpaid labor, and yeah, looping in interested people, so that not too much free labor is done by within the arts field. Also, photo shoots. What photo shoots might you need, or behind the scenes kind of documentation of your process that would be good for later, or for getting folks to the presenting moment at the end, or part of the residency. In my case, there was our residencies didn't have a lot of community involvement, in part because they weren't funded residencies, and to me, it's such a big lift to invite people and invite the public and invite any more than 5 people to a room for almost anything. So yeah, just a thing to think about, that some of your behind the scenes documentation and process can be a really good way to lift up your work into the future, not just at that residency. So then thinking about what spaces are best for you, what spaces are worth paying the application fee to apply to, or doing a lot of that behind the scenes, a lot of that work to understand enough details about that space to let it know why it's so special and significant to you, and as an opportunity to be at. What inspires you? Like, be honest with that. Do you want to work in a city? Do you want to not work in a city? Do you want to get as far away from a city as possible? Do you want to be around communities just like you? Do you want to be around communities that are more mixed than whatever identities you carry or your collective carries? Um, then safety for you, your collective, your community. There's a lot of levels to think about with regards to that, and there's a lot of just checking in with folks who have been at these residency spaces in the past to feel that out, to ask them how their experiences were, to ask them if anything disrespectful happened with the venue or the people that it hired, and how they addressed that, and whether they're accountable or whether they simply tried to do cover your ass type approaches when things were brought up. Um, so, more concretely, there are a series of organizations, probably throughout the continent at this point, that are producing writers and that are using writers. For anyone who doesn't know, a writer is a document that you submit at the beginning of an engagement with a venue or presenter, organization, host, saying these are my needs. These especially are the baseline needs, and it's sort of part of the contractual process that they are agreeing to meet those needs if they bring you on. So it's really important to try and have them early on in the process, um, so that everybody knows what is needed and everybody comes together to address them. There are indigenous organizations doing those for indigenous folks and people of color who are coming from culturally specific backgrounds and don't necessarily want to be explaining to everybody on staff a lot of the same basic things, or getting past their own preconceptions of other people's cultures. There are disability justice writers available, one from Axis Dance Company and one from Sins Invalid or Invalid. Sins Invalid, both are companies based in the Bay Area that are leaders in the disability justice work. And then there are also trans inclusive, which are broadly useful for the LGBT community. Trans inclusive writers available from Fresh Meat Productions, which is also based in SF. I believe, well, there are organizations that make these available for free to people, and many are searchable on Google, and they're becoming a convention. I think they should be utilized more because there's so many kinds of microaggressions that artists face especially from marginalized backgrounds. So, other things to think about and what spaces are maybe best for you as an artist. Are these spaces artist driven? Many spaces will take that term intentionally, and it often means that folks who work in most levels of their staff are artists themselves, and so very much empathize with our needs and how things can change, and the importance of um, advocating together for our artists to be paid equitably, etc. Then are they transparent? Do they make their budget somewhat transparent? Do they have flexibility for their production budget? Um, and then resourceful. Are they able to look beyond just the budget and just saying, yes, there's budget for this, no, there's not budget for that? Are they also willing to bring to bear some of their staff time, um, and community connections, to source props, to source items? And then is their outreach substantial and diverse? Hopefully they will not expect you to do all the outreach to your community. Hopefully they will at least get creative with the full force of their marketing team to think about how to do that with you and carry most of the legwork so that you don't also have to be a marketer. And then I encourage everybody to think about how we can ask for the things and suggest ways to attain them from the institutions and host organizations from the start, and to do so unapologetically. Requesting at first. So this is taking longer than I planned. So
You're still right on time, and we're right on time for the Q&A for you.
okay. Can I give a quick 5-minute description of the two residencies that I did?
Yeah, that's actually going to be a part of my question. So go for
Oh,
it.
okay, great. All right, so the two residencies that I did that were more substantial. One was in LA in January of 2025. I'll quickly describe how it came about. A folks who work for a presenting organization of a certain university, I will leave unnamed, have a conference at the end of January, and they saw my showcase performance in the Western Arts Alliance um, conference. Um, and about a year later, they worked with other people at their university to offer me a performance at a small festival, little summit they have that is pretty cool and pretty experimental and unconventional in its approaches. They offered me to perform on the rooftop of a department building. I was really excited. I love working and performing in unconventional spaces. They had a lot of flexibility in what could be presented. Initially, at least, they gave a lot of flexibility, had a lot of enthusiasm, said the scale could be way up there, including projection on this rooftop during the sunset with 360 view of the city. Um, Later on, I found out that some of my, well, specifically projection even, sounded very unfeasible to them. And by the time that I learned that, um, I had already made plans with a collaborator, had already set a plan of a lot of our performance being a 13-minute video film short film that we had produced and poured a lot of money into. And the long story short of that is that um, since they retracted their offer, basically, or they started becoming so nervous about feasibility, I started to say, well, these are the specifics of the scale that you indicated to me was possible. So, yes, please figure out how to at least meet that minimum scale. I will calibrate all the other production levels to shrink the whole thing so that we can at least show that film. Um, but yeah, meet me halfway. Um, and they did. They wound up projecting it. They wound up flexing these different producing muscles that they had in terms of relationships across the university. I had to figure out who on staff at the building not to talk to in terms of some of my riskier ideas up on the rooftop and who to talk to. And in getting into all the specifics of that, all of our main goals for the performance were realized. The second residency that I did later on in the year, um, yeah, in 2025 in the fall, was in Salvador, Bahia, Brazil. And it was with the same collaborator, or rather for the same performance piece. It's called Mother/Forgotten Blaze. And in it, we think about motherhood, queerness, and wildfires. We went to Salvador so that the main collaborator on that project could spend time in in a major cultural heart of Brazil. She's from Brazil, but grew up in Sao Paulo. And she is Afro-Indigenous and has not been able to connect to a lot of the Afrocentric cultural centers of Brazil. So she just wanted time there. Um, she got it funded by the Swiss government because she lives in Switzerland and has built a strong visibility and is actually nationally awarded in Switzerland. And with that Swiss funding, we applied to the official pathway for doing residencies in Brazil. The Swiss government, that those pathways denied us, but then contacted the collaborator directly saying, we denied you because we know that you can just email us directly and we'll say yes to a residency for you. It's a cool turn of events. When we did submit a proposal for this residency, it was they did say yes to it, but they said, "You're the only Brazilian national in this proposal, and you are who we will fund." So rather than being like, "Okay, we can't really work on this project because Javi won't be funded to go there," I said, I will pay my flight ticket to get down there. Ivy pay for the hotel with the funds, get a hotel with a couch in it. I will sleep on the couch." We wound up being able to stay there for 1 month, and we connected with so many different people in the community, especially in the Vogue House ballroom scene. We offered 3 workshops that were well attended. We threw a kiki ball, and we also shot a scene from the short film for the short film, and we were just able to do so much and to connect to such incredibly different city with such an incredibly different heart beating at the center of its culture. For folks who've been to Bahia, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I just want to lift that up, and in it there are some ways that we've worked with what's offered and what's not, and I think we also just say that we calibrated what we wound up giving based on how much community connection was offered, based on how much the host space came through with what it promised, and felt pretty fed in both situations, even though we had to demand at some points.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Javier. And just a few quick questions before we get into the panel with you and Scott. What have you felt most when you've walked into any artistic space? How have you felt most welcome?
One of the things that I'll do as an Indigenous performer that is really interested in bringing together and having in my audience POC and culturally rooted POC, is that I will ask in our first meetings for each person present, especially if we're going to be interacting with them or they're central to like the development of the project, the thing, the space, holding of the space, the container. I'll ask everybody to introduce themselves and their peoples. Their peoples. Oh no, somebody's trying to call me. Okay. Can see me? Can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. When I arrive at a place and everybody is willing to go as far back as they can go, even if that's just my folks are from Europe, or my folks are from Eastern Europe or Northern. So, the more specific that people can go, the more it indicates to me that they have done some work to get specific about who they are. And some of the work that's related to either decolonizing or just having some cultural humility and respectfulness for the different cultures that I'm going to be bringing into a space. Then one of the things that as Weaving Spirits Festival has felt at the theater that we worked at, when we ask a host space to do a land acknowledgement and to have a conversation about how performative land acknowledgements are and how they can move past the performativity of them at our performance, at our offering to community, willingness to have those conversations and go critical with those conversations and not give boilerplate land acknowledgements, and also maybe pay a tax to the local native tribes. All of those things are really strong indicators to us that at least the very first steps are willing to be taken.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And now we're going to move into our panel portion with Scott and Javier. And so whenever you're ready, Scott, we'll go ahead and spotlight you. Dun, dun. Go. See. Oh, there you go. Awesome. Thank you so much. So this question is going to be, these next couple questions are going to be for both of you. We'll start with Scott and then go to Javier and then kind of reverse it as we go. So the first one that we have, if anybody also has anything in the chat, please feel free to ask those in the chat as well. But for when you are, let's say, how do we ensure artists are not only invited into spaces, but able to remain in them with dignity?
Well, I think for us inside of the organization of Greenbox, it stems from the mission and values that we hold on to. We demand that everybody associated with the organization is welcoming, that we are accessible to all, that we are providing resources that will assist the artist in reaching their creative best selves. So, as I said in my portion of the talk earlier, our residencies are first and foremost in service of the artist, not the organization. And I think starting at that point allows that idea to follow through from the pre-moments, right? From if if somebody has applied to a residency and they've reached the sort of, we'll call it semi-finalist status, that's when I begin one-on-one in-person conversations. And generally, the actual residency occurs anywhere from 3 to 12 months following that conversation. So it's not just you've been awarded a residency, we'll see you sometime later in the year. We are building and developing a relationship with the artist before they ever step foot on site, which I think helps that idea win across the board.
Yeah, I love hearing all of that. Very much echo that. I'll also um, shoot, I already forgot what I was gonna add. What's the question?
No, you're fine. I had one for you, Javier, actually a different one that just popped up is what are signs that residencies value extraction over relationship that you've seen as an artist?
Hmm. Definitely, extraction is flagged by inflexible presenting parameters, um, and uh, I think also different when people are a little bit too enthusiastic to work with your type of artist for the first time. Um, and if they're uncomfortable to have conversations about balancing labor away from you initially, if you are the first or one of the first of a certain background. And then hopping back to the first question about how can artists sort of stay in spaces once they're invited in spaces. Yeah, I think it's about organizations getting resilient. And I mean that in terms of like looking honestly about where their fragilities are. I don't necessarily just mean organizational structural fragilities, but if a white presenter can't talk about being white to me, and can't talk about their cultural specificity, um, of their background, etc., um, then yeah, that often means to me that they're also not necessarily going to be practiced in some of their underlying biases being challenged by my art, by my voice, by Native families showing up with kids and showing up late too, maybe. And their front of house people not necessarily holding space for folks to just enter the theater at whatever point is okay and, to be hosted and taken care of. Um, yeah.
Awesome. And that actually really plays well into the next question for Scott is how do organizations build trust with communities who historically excluded or harmed by arts institutions?
Well, in Green Mountain Falls specifically, in effect, Greenbox is the only arts organization here, in so much so that some people consider us to be the local arts council, even though we are not. The very small size of the year-round residents inside this community demands hyper-specific conversations every day in every way. Uh, our downtown, where my office is located, is 1 block. So my ability to step outside and talk to people by name and ask what's happening with them instead of just waiting for them to want to know what's happening at Greenbox, um, builds trust. And I think it takes a lot of time. Uh, the community now trusts Greenbox, but I think at the beginning and maybe through the first decade of Greenbox's existence, it was very iffy, right? I think that there was concern, particularly because um, we have these art installations dotted throughout town. Some people live in this community because they want to be isolated, just like one of those opportunities we can afford in our artist residencies. And I think there was some concern that Greenbox was going to overtake the town, and that perhaps the town was going to be renamed Greenbox. But uh, building the trust and showing that we're in service of the artists that we work with, but in turn, we are in service of the community. Yes, we are able to reach people all over the world, but it's the hyper local community. It is the house that we share and live in together that comes first.
Awesome. Thank you. And Javier, does kind of play into the next and final question for you is if the artists are the heartbeat of the cultural ecosystems, what responsibilities do residencies carry in protecting that heartbeat?
Hmm. Um, I mean, I think um, I'm first drawn to the idea of that we're the blood flowing. Um, Maybe if the heart is well, yes. So the heart beats. So the sound, the resonance created by the blood flowing, getting all the ideas shaken up, getting expression happening, getting a lot of health and well-being in so many kinds of ways to the community. I think, and just getting it flowing within community between everybody's bodies. Um, I think um, arts houses need to consider their curatorial work comprehensively, and consider their curation is not just filling lineups in splashy ways that'll guarantee grant funding into the future or hype in the art scene, but the curation is about hosting and homemaking, and listening for all the needs of everyone who shows up, including being ready as much as possible for unexpected needs, including staying flexible and working past one's fragilities to be supple and adaptive, and not freak out or be completely liability averse when things go left, or just unexpected things happen, and just be willing to be present person to person with artists, be willing to be present person to person with audiences, um, and maybe also too to try and be more and more creative with those relationships in on the funder levels, on the larger arts ecosystem levels and larger resourcing platforms, to really try to invite those gatekeepers, those folks who have more resources, to the more community and or radical and or innovative, boundary pushing, and or simply just marginalized, little appreciated um, spaces of creativity.
Thank you, Javier. And then final question for Scott. If artists are helping organizations fulfill missions, attract funding, and build cultural relevance, what obligations do organizations have in return?
Everything. But I think as like a one line, I think it is to truly and totally support the artist that you are in agreement that you want to be part of your organization. It is a two-way street. Um, so the organization has to lead with, we are 100% in support of you and your work. That's why you are here. So let us do everything in our power as an organization to make your time here, whether it's one day or a month, as successful as possible.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much both for being here today, for being a part of this. I'm going to throw up on the screen just some resources so that if you would like to get more in contact with Scott and Javier, you can. So Scott, here we have the link that we'll be sending out into the slideshow that everyone will be receiving that attended today. This is the link that you'll be getting. It goes to the artists in residence for Green Box Arts. And if you do happen to be in the Colorado region, or you would like to fly out and see one of their many brilliant artists in residencies, please do. They have their season up and everything that they're doing and the wonderful art that they're creating here in Colorado that is going to affect beyond Colorado as well. You can also see here the link to Weaving Spirits, Javier's website that co-produces and Festival of the Two-Spirit performance, as well as her EPK for any information on what one of these would look like, as well as what that looks like for your artist in residency as well. And then next here we have, if anyone would like to sign up for currents, information on the grants, awards, and opportunities here at Creative West. You can look into any issue. It does a funding spotlight as your go-to spot for grant deadlines, awards, and events. Stories that inspire if you are a former grantee here with Creative West. Explore the Story Vault, a celebration of grantees who have transformed ideas into action, creating ripples and impact in their communities, voices that unite, and resources. So this is a really great one-stop shop for all the information on the grants, awards, and programs opportunities here at Creative West. Currently, we are having a individual grant open, the Pacific Jurisdictions Artist Fund, which is open until we extended that due to the typhoons and flooding on the island. So it was supposed to close at the end of May. It was now extended by 2 weeks. So if you are on a Pacific Jurisdiction island, please apply to that. And then next, we have capacity building webinars, June 9th. Program evaluation and impact storytelling. So collect data and share the story of your work. And then for artists, accessibility and practice, ASL, CART, and UDL for artists, tools to make artistic practice more inclusive and accessible. Again, thank you so much to Scott and Javier for coming. You can find a lot of those resources in the chat. Thank you so much, Sierra, for putting those in there, as well as our feedback survey that will be sent along as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time and effort today, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.
Thanks, Scott. It was great being in convo with you.
Likewise.
Ciao, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.